Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something really foundational, I think, for achieving consistency.
Oh yeah, what's that?
It's this whole idea of truly understanding yourself.
Hmm.
We've been looking at some material that argues this isn't just, helpful, it's essential.
Right, the bedrock of actual lasting success, not just a fluke.
Exactly. And what really stood out was how directly it addresses that tendency to avoid looking inward.
Yeah, the blaming external stuff when things go wrong.
Right. Instead of asking, okay, what's my part in this?
Absolutely. It's acknowledging that, sure, external factors exist, but how we deal with them consistently, well, that seems to come down to our own internal landscape.
There's definitely that temptation, isn't there, to just blame circumstances.
Oh, for sure. It's easier. But this perspective really pushes you to think, okay, what are my own biases, my blind spots? Are they the real drivers?
Okay, so let's unpack that a bit. This resistance to knowing thyself, as they say. Why is that so common? Why do we resist looking inward?
Well, I think it often comes down to, basic human nature, protecting the ego. It's just much more comfortable to say, oh, the market was bad or that person caused the problem than to face our own shortcomings.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And this perspective we're exploring kind of suggests this avoidance might stem from, well, maybe a fear of being vulnerable.
Or maybe just not knowing how to self-reflect effectively.
That too. Yeah. The whole idea of a really deep personal inventory, it can feel pretty daunting, maybe even, unpleasant.
Because you have to look at the parts you'd rather ignore.
Exactly. The stuff you keep in the shadows.
And this leads straight into that point about there being basically no shortcuts to consistency. This isn't some quick hack, right?
Not at all. The message seems crystal clear.
Yeah.
Reliable, steady success isn't built on occasional flashes of brilliance.
Or just copying someone else who looks successful.
Right. Or mimicking their surface level stuff. Think about those, viral hits that just disappear. The whole flash in the pan thing.
Yeah.
Gone tomorrow. True consistency, according to this view, needs a much, much deeper grasp of your own internal operating system. Your strengths, yes, but maybe even more crucially, your built-in limitations.
Which brings us neatly to this idea of finding your own lane. It's not about trying to be a clone of someone else.
Precisely. Trying to just copy-paste someone else's strategy or path without understanding your own internal compass?
Well, it's just setting yourself up for frustration, isn't it?
Seems like it.
So this perspective really stresses figuring out your own unique tendencies, the good and the bad, and then building a system or approach that actually works with your nature.
And that starts with facing those ugly areas, as it was put, the personal weaknesses.
Yeah, acknowledging them honestly, because they can derail even the best plans.
Okay, this focus on identifying personal weaknesses feels really central.
Right.
The argument is that everyone has these frailties, I guess, that can ultimately trip them up.
Right, and what's interesting is how it connects things that seem separate, like problems in your personal relationships.
So, well, the thinking is the underlying character traits causing those issues. Maybe it's impulsivity, maybe it's needing constant validation, maybe trouble with conflict.
Okay.
Those same traits are probably going to leak into other areas that need discipline and clear thinking. You can't really compartmentalize yourself perfectly.
So like a weakness in one area acts like a crack in the foundation.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. It eventually weakens the whole structure.
But there was also that relatable point about using past pain sometimes as a driver for seeking instant gratification.
Oh, absolutely. That urge to find quick comfort or validation to, numb old hurts. Very human.
But ultimately unsustainable is the point.
Exactly. This viewpoint suggests real consistency isn't built by chasing those fleeting highs. It means actually facing and processing the underlying stuff, not just looking for temporary fixes.
Which kind of explains why that sugar-coated content that avoids the tough self-assessment just doesn't cut it long term.
Precisely. Real growth apparently comes from leaning into the discomfort of looking at yourself honestly.
Okay, then the discussion shifts a bit to how external factors do impact our internal state, with a really strong warning about substance abuse.
Yeah, this seems like a hard line in this perspective. Things like alcohol, recreational drugs, they directly mess with your cognitive function.
Which is fundamental for focus and consistency.
It's basic biology, right? If you're regularly altering your brain chemistry, you're actively undermining your ability to perform well in anything that requires clear thought and discipline.
Makes sense.
And the example given about people struggling with hidden substance issues while trying to be consistent, It just highlights how fundamental this is. You can't build anything solid on that kind of foundation.
The perspective also uses these really good analogies, like a kink in your armor or rock in your shoe.
Yeah, I liked those.
Talk about other personal issues that might seem smaller but still hold you back significantly.
They're powerful because they show how even these nagging personal struggles can create a huge amount of drag, out of proportion almost.
Like the codependency example.
That's a perfect one. Yeah. If you have this underlying need for constant approval, or you're terrified of being alone, that can drive really impulsive actions, right? Maybe rash decisions at work, maybe self-sabotaging stuff, just to avoid feeling anxious.
Those are the hidden rocks that keep tripping you up.
Exactly. The things you might not even realize are the main problem.
It really is striking how much emphasis gets placed on avoiding this personal inventory. It sounds like something people actively dodge.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because real self-assessment forces you to face uncomfortable truths.
Yeah.
It means you have to honestly look at your patterns. Where do I keep creating problems? What kind of drama do I seem to attract? When do I make reckless choices? What triggers my impulsive side?
Yeah, that's tough stuff to look at.
It can be painful, so it's understandable why people avoid it. But the core idea here is that avoidance is exactly what stops you from getting the consistency you want.
Okay, now the source material touches on some potentially gendered examples regarding impulsivity, and it feels important to handle that carefully.
Yes, absolutely crucial. These are presented as observations of potential tendencies, definitely not as hard and fast rules about whole groups.
Right, so like the example of impulsive spending.
Yes, that was one example. And it was kind of contrasted with another example in trading, where maybe someone jumps out of a good position too early because of fear,
Okay.
and then impulsively jumps back in because of regret, reacting to minor market noise without a real plan.
Got it. So the underlying point isn't really about gender.
No, not fundamentally. It's about identifying patterns of impulsive behavior, whatever they look like, and whoever is doing them. The perspective acknowledges this kind of reactivity can affect anyone.
And that ties right into the urge for quick results, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And the difficulty in being patient.
Yeah, they seem really linked. That desire to learn fast, get results now, it often clashes head-on with the fact that real mastery, real consistency just takes time and discipline and patience. Lots of patience.
It's a skill you have to develop, not something you're born with.
Exactly. The ability to stick with your plan, to hold on to gains, even when things get choppy. That's learned. It's not innate.
But we all kind of think we'll be the exception, right? That we can shortcut the process.
That's the human tendency, isn't it? I can do it faster. But that often leads straight back to those impulsive moves that undermine everything.
And the conclusion really hammers this home. Impulsively jumping back into things after getting out too early, it shows a lack of, inner contentment?
Yeah, or maybe highlights a character trait that needs work for real success. That feeling of, oh no, I missed out, got to get back in NIW.
Right.
Instead of being able to sit with the decision, trust the process, it can signal this deeper restlessness, maybe fear of missing out, like you said.
So addressing that underlying impulsivity, figuring out why it's there, that's fundamental.
That's presented as a key step, yeah. Building the kind of self-mastery you need for long-term, reliable consistency.
Okay, so to kind of wrap up this deep dive, the main takeaway really seems to be that genuine, lasting consistency. It doesn't come from some magic external formula.
No secret sauce out there.
It comes from this deep and, probably difficult journey of understanding yourself, really getting honest about your weaknesses, your tendencies towards messing things up impulsively.
Precisely. It's not quick. It's definitely not always easy. It demands real honesty, facing your limits. But according to this view, that internal work is it's the non-negotiable foundation.
You can't build lasting success without it.
That seems to be the core message.
Okay, so with all that in mind, maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. What rock in your shoe might you be overlooking right now?
Good question.
What personal pattern, what tendency, maybe it seems small, could be subtly holding you back? And how might getting really honest about it, addressing it, how might that open the door to greater consistency in whatever you're pursuing?
Definitely something worth reflecting on.
It really is.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.